Good morning, friends. I hope you all are doing well. So, we have completed our lesson number one, that is your first introduction to accounting. Now, we are starting with the second chapter, and that is your dual effects of transactions. Hey, dual effects of transaction and types of account. What is dual effect? Remember, we had seen in the previous chapter that was accounting has a two effect, debit and credit, right? That only we are going to see. So here I'm not going typically in theory wise, I'll go with the upper layer so you can easily analyze and we can jump to finally debit and credit pattern of our chapter, right? So let us see, I'm going step by step but not in details. In reading through, I'll give my information. First, it's a business transaction. What are business transaction? It has to be when the transaction is done, it should be a business transaction, means it should be economic transaction. Now remember, what is economic transaction? Money should be the medium of exchange. So economic transaction, then economic transaction should have monetary value, what the value of the property, the value of the the value of the goods should be there, and in cash or credit, that also we had seen. And the transaction can be internal or external also, right? So we had seen this classification of business transaction, your economic transaction and non-economic transaction. Non-economic transactions are like that transaction that does not has money in it. Take example, I'm giving example of goods, order of goods of rupees 10,000 uh, is received from A. So this is my sales related, but I had just received an order. I had not sold that goods, right? So that is a non-economic. Just receiving an order is not a economic transaction. What is economic transaction? Either you had seen, if after receiving this order, I had sold this, I had sent the goods to the A and of 10,000. So that would be an economic transaction. So economic transactions are again of two types, cash transactions and credit transactions. Is it clear? So cash transactions and credit transactions. What are cash transactions? You know very well, when you go to the any of the shop, retail shop, you buy it in cash. It's a cash transaction. When you go, especially in wholesale business or some, if it's a known place of yours and you don't have money and you have taken the goods and the payment will be done by you afterwards, that is you are going to pay in future, it is a credit transaction. Other transactions and internal external transactions viewpoint, right? So internal transaction and external transaction. Non-economic transactions. So following is the presentation in tabular form. Business transaction, that is economic transaction. Cash, if the transaction would be either cash or credit, then cash transaction, credit transaction, other transaction. Non-economic transaction are only same, and their internal and external transaction, that is internal transaction and external transaction. Now what are economic transactions? That is known to you. The economic transactions are that transactions that are measured in terms of money, and goods are exchanged in exchange of money, right? So it's an economic transaction, but it can either be cash or credit. Cash or udhar, right? Exchange of goods for assets, goods and service. There are two important aspects of economic transaction. What are they? There are two aspects of economic transaction. Exchange of cash for assets, goods or services. Right. Suppose you are taking mobile phone service. So what you are paying? You are paying amount of that service, right? 399, 299, whatever the plan is. But cash is given, and what is availed by you? Service. Creation of relationship of data creditor for asset, goods or service. So there is, when if it is a credit transaction, then only the debtor or creditor relationship for assets or goods or services there. Out of these two conditions, if one condition is fulfilled, the transaction can be measured in terms of money, and consequently that transaction becomes economic transaction. Right. So here I don't think you would be having an issue What is economic transaction? What is non-economic transaction? Everything we are seeing is in clear form. Cash transaction and credit transaction. Now, taking care of cash and credit transaction. In cash transaction, what happens? The transaction of money is paid, received for exchange of goods or services. As I said, you are taking the service of mobile telecom company. You are paying cash. What is you getting in exchange? You are getting service in exchange. Or suppose you are buying milk from any of the dairy. What you are paying cash, you are paying, and you are getting milk in the return. The goods or services there. So in this clear transaction of giving cash and receiving goods or service. But here you can see it is classified cash transaction for asset, cash transaction for goods, and cash transaction for services. In this category, asset is purchased by payment of money. Money is realized by the sale of asset. Furniture worth rupees 10,000 is purchased for business. Cash paid and asset is purchased. A scooter sold for 40,000, asset sold and cash is received. So what happened in relation to cash and assets? So one thing comes in and one thing goes out. What we are getting, we are purchasing asset, so cash is going out and we are getting the asset. In the same way, when I'm selling any of the asset, we are seeing in example scooter. So scooter is sold. So what happens? Asset goes out and cash is received. Cash transaction for goods. Goods is purchased in exchange of money or money is realized from sale of goods, that is goods worth rupees 15,000 is purchased in cash, goods worth rupees 18,000 is sold for cash. So what is happening over here? Goods are purchased and sold on cash. Goods are, if I am purchasing, suppose I am a businessman and I am purchasing goods of rupees 50,000 in cash. So what I am doing? I am selling that goods in 50,000. Purchasing that goods in 50,000. Now that goods I had purchased, so obviously I am dealing in that business. So I will sell that by adding certain profit. So that 50,000 goods, after selling them, I am getting 65,000 on that goods. Selling of the goods is 65,000. So what I am getting, my goods goes out and I am getting the cash of rupees 65,000. What is the profit? 15,000 is my profit. Now cash transaction for service. Cash is paid off for acquired service, or cash is received for acquired service. Example, salary paid to employee. We are paying salary to employee. So employee has given us a service and that's why we are paying the cash. Right. And brokerage received rupees 9,000. Now what is brokerage? Suppose you had there in your transaction of purchase and sale of a businessman and you have brought a purchaser for a seller. So that becomes your brokerage. You will ask them to pay you something and that is your income and it is termed as brokerage. So you are receiving it. Right. All these are received in cash. Pending is not there. So that is a cash transaction. Now, note here the meaning of service in business transaction: when money is paid or received in exchange for work, except physical asset, they are treated as service. Here, the meaning of service is different, right? Transactions or receive for receivables and payable. Transactions for receivables and payable. Any amount which is outstanding to pay for assets, goods or service acquired in the past is known as payable. Are you getting me? We had purchased any asset and the amount is yet to be paid. Means I need to pay it in future. It is termed as payables. An outstanding, which is outstanding to pay for asset, acquired in past is known as payable. These are paid in present. Right? These are paid in present. Any amount which is outstanding to receive for assets, goods or services provided in the past is called receivable. In the same way, suppose you had sold anything or you had given any service, right, and the amount is yet to be received for that particular work, so that is your receivable. These are received in present. The outstanding payment of 3,000 for goods purchased from uh, from Ramila is made. The goods worth rupees 4,000 were sold to Rashmi. The outstanding amount received in cash. Instead of cash transaction, if transactions are made through check, that is by bank, this is also treated as check, cash. Are included in cash transaction. Is it clear? Now, credit transaction. In this type of transaction, money is not immediately for purchase or sale transaction of goods and services. Money for those purchase and sale is to be paid in future. You are going to pay in future. Okay. So, now credit transactions are clear to you that goods are purchased or sold in present and the amount is paid or received in future. That is only your credit transaction, Udhar transaction. Money for those purchases is to be paid in future. However, exchange of assets, goods and services made in present. Accounts are settled in future. From this transaction, relation of debtors and creditors. What is the relation? Debtors and creditors comes into existence. Is it clear? So from here, the debtor or creditor relationship comes into existence because the person that is purchasing goods had purchased on credit. So he becomes debtor of a seller. Is it clear? Right? So debtor and creditor relationship comes over there. Right? So in brief, purchase and sale of assets, goods, service are made in present, but the money is payable and receivable in future. These transactions are recognized as credit transactions. Goods worth rupees 4,000 is sold to Kalpana on credit. See, the word on credit is given means we had not paid any amount for it. And if the word credit is not given, then also there are certain transactions. Your questions would be arising, teacher, how we are going to classify? It's a cash transaction or credit transaction. But let me clear you what is credit transaction. Kalpana becomes debtor of business and business becomes creditor for the goods. Goods worth 6,000 is purchased from Deepika on credit. Deepika becomes creditor for the business. Business becomes debtor for Deepika. Right? So here, other transactions, the transactions that do not fall in the above mentioned two types are special transactions. These are neither cash nor credit. So, what kind of transactions are these? These are special transactions. These transactions are recorded in the books. And remember, I had said if good destroyed in accident, theft of goods, given for donation, goods given for advertisement, assets turned defective or useless, goods withdrawn for personal use. All this comes in other transactions. Is it clear? So internal and external viewpoint. Now we are seeing internal transactions and external transactions. What are internal transactions? In certain transactions, there is no need of other party. This transaction would take place within the business. This transaction recorded in the books of account. Depreciation of asset, loss due to natural calamity means that is happening within the organization. That's why it is internal transaction, because depreciation, we are using the machine and depreciation is an expense, so we are deducting it from our asset, right? So that's why it's an internal transaction. These are all economic transactions but are non-cash transactions. External transaction, these transactions are between business and other parties. These are economic transactions of business. These transactions are recorded in the books of account, that is sale of goods to customer, payment of wages to workers, interest received from bank, amount paid for insurance premium, purchase of machinery, cash deposit, etc. Whatever the type of payment you are paying to any other third party, not in your business, is termed as external transaction. Either you are paying to the bank for interest, either you are paying to your debtor, either you are paying to your creditor, either you are receiving interest from the bank, either you are paying wages to your employees, workers, salary to the employees, all are external because it is not coming in the organization. Non-economic transactions are those transactions whose value cannot be measured in terms of money, right? That cannot be valued in terms of money. Now, teacher, what are the non-economic transactions? Let us see. As I had given you example, an order is received to supply goods after 1 month. A meeting held with a consultation for expansion of business. So I had just received an order. I had not sent it. When I sent it, at that time it's an economic transaction. So whenever you receive an order, it's a non-economic transaction. So describe whether the following transactions are economic or non-economic transactions and clarify the reason for it. So as you are going to see this video on Thursday, so and Friday is the submission of your lesson number 1. Right. In yesterday's video, you would have seen, that is on Monday or Tuesday, you would have seen your last lecture of lesson number 1. So I hope you all will complete, and I have given selected questions. You can easily complete it. Right. So from Friday we are starting, not Friday. From Saturday we are starting with the writing of lesson number 2. Right. So now the question arises: what is to be written? So your submission of writing of for lesson number 2 is on Saturday. That is the topic. This describe whether the following transactions are economic or non-economic. Describe whether the following transactions are economic or non-economic transaction. Asset purchase for rupees 10,000. See, we had purchase, so obviously it's the economic economic transaction. Asset purchase from Radha for rupees 12,000 on credit. Though it's a credit transaction, so and also it's an economic transaction. Asset sold for rupees 20,000. So it is a credit transaction. Sorry, economic transaction. Asset sold to Mira on credit for rupees 22,000. Then it is again a transaction. 8,000 paid for wages. So we had paid. What paid is there? So it is an economic transaction. See, I underline certain words. Through this, you can easily confirm whether it is a economic transaction or non-economic. See, whenever the word paid is there, means you had paid cash. Received means you had received cash. So 9,000 received for rent, it is an economic transaction. Liability of 15,000 is settled. Settled means you had paid. So it is an economic transaction. Receivable of 18,000 is received. So again, it is received economic transaction. An order is received. An order an order is received to supply goods of 10,000. Hence, we had just received an order. We had not supplied the goods. When we'll supply, at that time it will be a transaction of economic. But here receiving the order is just a non-economic transaction. A planning is made to buy an asset. You had not bought an asset. You are planning to buy an asset. See, you will be planning to buy a two-wheeler, but you had not bought. So planning is not an economic transaction, so non-economic transaction. To enhance sales for discussion, a meeting is arranged with salesmen. Right, all the salesmen are gathered together and they are discussing. So meeting is arranged with salesmen. Again, it's a non-economic transaction. Is it clear? Transactions of economic transactions will be having cash, credit, receivables, payables, received, settled. All these words will be there. So this is your, and just same format you have to write. So don't ask me टीचर ऐसा करना था ऐसा करना था ऐसा करना था नहीं जैसा आपको टेक्स्ट बुक में दिया है बेटा वैसा ही करना है so don't chat your matha and my matha also so see question no need to copy directly like this you will write is it clear whether it's an economic transaction or it's a non-economic transaction reasons are also given cash is against asset right all is given I had highlighted in the question also. This is identification of cash and credit transaction. In this transaction, kind of transaction, there is an exchange of. Now, how we will recognize, as I had said you will say, teacher, how I'm going to recognize if it's a cash transaction or not. So let us go to that. It's there is an exchange of cash or bank through cash or bank. In such transaction, the word is cash is mentioned. Right? In such transaction, the word cash is mentioned. In such transaction, the word cash is mentioned. if the word is cash is not mentioned and the name of person is also not mentioned, then also it is treated as a cash transaction. Like sold goods of rupees 10,000. Here cash word is not there and not a name of a party is given. Again I am repeating the transaction. Sold goods of rupees 10,000. To whom I had sold, I had not given the name. I had not mentioned I had received cash. But it is a cash transaction because sold goods of rupees 10,000 means it's a sale and we had received a cash amount. Is it clear? So it is a cash transaction. Two things, word cash or bank is given because if you receive a check, then also it is treated as cash. Then word cash is mentioned. And if the word cash is not mentioned along with the name of a party, so it is a cash transaction. In this transaction, bank cash account is definitely affected and consequently bank or cash increases or decreases. Obviously, the bank or cash balance increases or decreases because suppose I am purchased goods of rupees 10,000. Purchase goods of rupees 10,000. Have I used word cash? No. Have I said the name from whom I had purchased? No. So what is that? It's just a cash transaction. Purchase goods of rupees 10,000. So I had paid. So my bank balance or cash balance from my business is decreasing. So it will have the effect of increase and decrease on cash or bank balance. Suppose purchase goods of rupees 5,000, right? And I had paid check. So bank is affected. Then I paid through check. So obviously my bank balance decreases. So here the word paid or received is also written. When word paid or received are there. Suppose I had highlighted upstairs 5,000 paid for salary. 5,000 paid for. Paid means हमने दे दिया. हमने दे दिया तो हमारे हाथ से क्या गया? Cash has gone. Right? So 5,000 paid for salary. So that is a cash transaction. 5,000 received for brokerage. So I had received means मेरे पास पैसा आ गया. Receivables and received. Paid and payables both are different. Payable means future में देना है. Paid यानी present में आ गया. Received यानी present में आ गया. Receivables यानी future में आएगा. Right? So it is your a very interesting topic that we are going to see. And until and unless you don't enjoy your studies, make my words, you will not be able to understand what is accounting. So you need to learn or you need to see what is accounting. Credit transaction I'll start in another lecture. So for right now, you are going to write on Saturday this illustration one. Now your writing pattern goes on. If you are not following my instruction, you have to pay for it. In short, I'm not going to give you more time for completion of book. As soon as I'm completing the chapters, I will ask you to submit the book. So better you follow my instructions. In theory, it was different thing. I was explaining everything was not required to return. So I had given you after completion of this. But in this practical chapters, students should have to daily practice with me. Is it clear? And for these only I had given you Saturday. आया समझ में? And for the next credit transaction also I'm going to give you Saturday's day only. Right, so till then, tata, bye bye, take care of yourself and your family, and please stay home, stay safe.